Okay, so for the next part, we're going to have a look on how to retrieve this information. So we're already looking at SNMP, so let's have a quick look on what we need to retrieve our information. I like to use this DIS tree to just give you an indication of the structure. We've already looked at a param, but let's just have a look at the structure of the protocol in total. We have a set of variables. We have params, for instance, system description, uptime, and so on and so on and so on. This is the data I would like to make available, and it could be on screen, it could be towards another module in DataMiner, or it could even be something logical inside my protocol. A group, I like to refer this as a to-do list. What would I like to do? I'm going to combine it as my little container. It's my group of components I would like to do. So this could be perform a few calculations, go to a quick action, do something, get in contact with a database, or get the information from a data source. And that's what we're going to focus on now. We want to retrieve information from somewhere. And in this example, it's retrieving information from an SNMP communication device. So what I can see here is a list of params. I would like to get the information for these params. Now it still doesn't really say where to find this information on my SNMP data source. Now remember, we had something small in the param indication, we had the SNMP. Now this is the location. OID, SNMP OID is a location. So this is a location where to grab that information from. So in our definition, we're going to say, I would like to grab the information from there and then display it in this param. How do I know it's displayed in this param? Well, quite obvious. It's because this location, this SNMP indication, is integrated in that param definition. So whenever I'm going to execute or run my group, my to-do list, it's going to grab the information from a specific OID and place it into that variable. Now it's not my protocol who's going to grab the information. Of course, this is just a definition, my logic will run. It will pass this request to another process in DataMiner. Process called SNMP Manager. So he's going to manage all the SNMP communication going from my protocol logic to somewhere an external data source. Once it retrieves some information from my data source, it will make sure to map it to this param. It was this element requesting it for this param, so that's where my data should be located at. Now, one small thing I want to add is the multiple get true. What does this mean? It's going to combine requests into one. It would be as if I'm asking you your home address, your name, do you have children, and so on. So instead of me asking you and waiting for your reply and then asking you again, I'm going to combine it all in one. It could be a form. I'm going to give you a form. These are my questions that I have for you. Fill them in. After you filled it in, return the information to me. Now you can actually already start to imagine if this would be a gigantic form you need to fill in, I will need to wait a very long time before you are finished. So the smaller the chunks, the faster we can have an interaction. It could be that I say, well, stop about filling in that form. I don't really need the information anymore. Cancel this request, this big request. So whenever we have smaller chunks of to-do lists, I can do something in between. I can cancel it. And I believe keeping in mind, can I cancel it quite quickly, helps you to develop something that will, as an end result, have a flexible and fast way of interacting. Because that's what we want. It doesn't only need to run fast, it needs to have a fast and flexible interaction as well. So multiple get true is going to combine it. The more I combine requests, the more I have the chance that it will fail. If one component is not there, if you could not fill in one question from the form, you will fail. You will not return the information to me. So what does it make easy for you is when you have a list of information here. For instance, all of this would indicate not initialized, it's not there. It could already ring a bell. Maybe this is retrieved all together and one of the components isn't there. Groups, to-do lists, again, you can see that it has a unique ID. Why? So I can reference, I would like to run this specific to-do list. Can give it a nice name, description, so it's easy and readable for me as well. Now let's have a look. You can see this little paper clip. I can jump to components in my development. Now in this example, I could already see my timers, but imagine more bigger developments, it will be easy to just jump to the components you want. Now a timer. Now the default scenario is that on a regular time, I would like to retrieve specific information. That's where you need a timer. So you can see again, timer has a unique ID, so I can reference to it. It will have a name, I can give it a time. So this is the iteration, the loop it needs to use. And I'm going to I'm going to add my group in the content. So this specific iteration, I would like to execute these groups. So I can add multiple groups. Now in this example, it's just one, but I can add multiple groups. So what's going on? It will iterate. Is my timer time already passed? Yes, then I will perform these groups. What will these groups do? Well, I have a content in this case as well. It's an SNMP device, so I will have my params indicated in here. And whenever I go to my params, you can see I have an SNMP location, so my data miner will know this is the information to grab and place in this readable component. Now, of course, one thing I didn't say is that I have an indication in my protocol, in my header, that this is, of course, an SNMP communication. So by default, I'm going to add SNMP v2, but do know on Elements, when you edit it, you can update it to SNMP version 1, version 2, or even version 3. Do keep in mind there are some differences. Now, let's stick to the basics. I will indicate this is an SNMP communication I'm going to use. So I will have my timer on a regular time. I'm going to run a to-do list. What's my to-do? In this case, retrieve param 1000, 1001, 1002, and so on. What's there, what's in there is the location to grab it from, display it properly. That's reading the information. Now we also want to set some information. Remember, we had the system location where we had our SNMP location as well. So I'm going to retrieve my location. And the second component was my writable. You can see that the location is the same, which is normal because I would like to set that particular location. Now imagine that your manual would indicate you have a read component on this location, but the writable component for that item is actually somewhere else. In that case, you would need to set it on a different location. So it's not always identical. Please check the reference of your data source. Now, of course, in my example, I have similar locations, so I'm going to set the info. Now, just having a writable component doesn't mean that I'm going to set it or send it towards my data source. It just means I have a writable component on my display. I can use it in my protocol. In Data Miner, there's a writable component. So how do I make sure I can send it to my data source? Well, there's an option here called SNMP set and get. So I'm going to perform the set. Now, when is this option going to trigger? When is it going to do that set? As soon as I make a change. Writable components is always a change. Even if you would set the same value, remember, you might have a button. It's a writable component as well. When we click on something, It's always the same thing. I'm going to reset, I reset again, another reset. So it's the same value. It needs to be seen as a change. So whenever I have a value added in my write, it will perform this first part, the SNMP set. So it's going to make a set of the value I've just written to this location. Now to confirm, instead of waiting on my timer time to update my read component, to confirm, it's going to do and a get. So I will have a set and a get after the set to make sure that my read component is updated as well. Now let's have a look, data miner, so I can still see my config page here. Now let's have my system location maybe change to Skyline HQ, and let's click on enter, and we can see confirmation. I'm going to set it, so you can see it's quite fast. I have my Skyline HQ in my read component. Now what happened in the background is I have my writable box, I filled in a value, I had it changed, SNMP set was performed, and then a get, so my system location got updated. Now this was a small view on how to make an SNMP device running, or an SNMP development, getting your information. It's a basic part, and now it's up to you to start making your first SNMP development. Play around, look at the layout as well. So whenever you would have a protocol, have a look at the layout, and try to challenge yourself to make it even better.